Thank you, Phil, for the introduction. Thank you for the honor to be the first speaker at this conference. And also thank you, Peter, for being such a fantastic host here. I will talk about some of the strategies that we have been using to put ourselves on the map, and particularly about the triple helix, and how we try to be, at the same time, regionally very effective and also international as a university. Before I start, maybe, since we have 31 countries, where are the Netherlands? The Netherlands is this little tiny speck here at the top of Europe, and this is the Netherlands, a country of 16 million inhabitants. And it's interesting to know that the blue stuff are actually the areas that are below sea level. So the Dutch have been very effective in building technology to protect us from water flowing in. This meeting is about rankings, so how about some, this is Maastricht, by the way, down here in the very south of the country, surrounded by Belgium and Germany. Some rankings of the Netherlands. In terms of area, we are number 133, population 64, economy the 17th, healthcare index number 6, the development index number 5, and in happiness number 7. We used to be number 1, but then our football team started to lose. How about universities in the Netherlands? They're actually also doing quite well. This is from the Times Higher Education 2 years or 3 years ago. In the rankings, you can still see that it's not the newest one because the UK here is still part of Europe. And if you look at the Netherlands, you see that if 11 universities in the top 200 of the world rankings, so not only new universities. The best one, there are none in the top 50, so they're lagging behind the UK, Germany, and are slightly ahead of France. But if you consider the fact that there are only 14 universities in the Netherlands, actually having 11, and I think now there are 12, it's not just the best score, because the percentage of universities in the top 200 then is much higher than in a lot of other countries. And if you would do this analysis, you would see countries such as Switzerland or some of the Scandinavian countries much more in the top group of this. But we're not happy with that, not unhappy with that. So 2 slides about Maastricht University. We are the youngest Dutch research university, so whatever happens to these rankings, we'll always be number 1 in the Netherlands because we're the only one under 50. We are the most international university in the Netherlands, and we are really located at the south, but it's really the heart of Western Europe. We have more borders with Belgium and Germany than connect with our own country, and this also has influenced our international profile and strategy. And we are one of 2 universities in the Netherlands that went through an accreditation as an international university. The second one is the University of Wageningen. We are 41 years old, and it's interesting to know that this university was founded, like many others of young universities, as a reaction of an economic crisis. In the 70s, the mining industry ended, and there was a lot of unemployment, and a politician from our region, this man, established a medical faculty, actually, before there was a university with 48 students, just betting that the government would succumb and make this a university. And that also happened in 1976, when we started as the University of Limburg, which is the name of our province, the state in the Netherlands. And then in the following years, the university grew into a comprehensive university with faculties of law, economics, social sciences, psychology, a university college, a liberal arts and science college, and also a transnational university with another university in Belgium. And then so last year we celebrated 40 years after this young but yet rich and special history. What are our features? Our university is built entirely on the concept of problem-based learning over all faculties, so not just in medicine. We have what we call an international classroom, which means that we place students in our educational groups from different cultures. So we think cultural experience is very important in learning problem-based. We are very interdisciplinary, so we have a lot of research projects that are going across disciplines and different faculties. We have this concept that is called local to global. I will reiterate on that in a minute. We have a strong focus on employability. We have one of the highest employability numbers in our country, even in the humanities. And we consider us an international network university. Now, what is that, an international network university? First of all, you need a truly international academic community. As you can see, 51% of our 17,000 students are non-Dutch. We also have a significant amount of non-Dutch academic staff, actually non-academic staff. 40% of our academic staff is non-Dutch. So this is, of course, creating a very international atmosphere. And Maastricht, if you know it, is a very international community. We take students from all over the world, but our strong focus is students from Europe. So that's our, I would say, most intense inflow. And from outside Europe, the country, like many other universities, the top country is China. But internationalization doesn't mean a collection of students with as many as possible international passports. It also means that you need to have internationalization built in research and the educational process. So we foster student mobility in almost all faculties. We have mandatory semesters abroad. And we, to do this, we have 300 partner universities in 60 countries. We are, in Europe, one of the top universities in terms of incoming and outcoming students that stay with us or go away for a semester. And many of them actually also like to go to Australia, and we have an ongoing collaboration with QUT and UQ. So this also helps for being international networking. So we have currently 170 nationalities at our university. Of course, we have I think several thousand from Germany and 1,000 from Belgium and 3 from Cyprus, but it's a very international group, and we also foster this group by organizing many activities to have this international community at our university. Being a network university also means that you're part of networks, and we chose deliberately 2 networks. One is WUN, which is a worldwide research university network, and we choose it because the 4 research topics that are focused there really correspond to our research topics: public health, climate change, understanding cultures, and of course higher education and research. And in this network there are about 100 different research initiatives with 500 researchers, which gives really also a global footprint. And as you can see, we not only organized the World Conference for Maastricht after Hong Kong and New York in our little city, we're also very active in the policy discussions such about Brexit. And we are co-founder of a network of young universities. Some of the representatives are here in the room. You may have heard of LERO. That's it's called the Leading Universities Network, Research University Network. So we had the Young European Research University Network also to put ourselves on the map. And this is very active also in joint double degrees, but also plays a role in European policy making and higher education. But let's talk about what young universities should do and give you some examples. This is how I see university in the Times of Reputation ranking. Sometimes you feel you have to make a choice whether you want to be a regional, kind of old-fashioned farm-like university, or whether you want to be Harvard-like. And of course, if you talk to our supervisory board, now politicians, everybody likes you to be a little Harvard. But that's difficult because, you know, in 200 years maybe we could think about that. So my point is that this regional aspect and the internationalization strategy is not a contradiction in terms, but it's really a continuum. You can be very international, you can be a global university, but your regional impact can play an important role just to fulfill your mission. And that's what we have done in the last years. In the second half of my talk, I will give you some examples for that. So Maastricht University, as I've told you, is in this little corner of the country which has only 650,000 people. And in our country, of course, the big powerhouses here around the Amsterdam area with 4.5 million inhabitants. So it's very hard to compete against that. But if you delete our borders and look at our region, which we call the SOEU region, which has parts of Germany, Belgium, it goes into up to Luxembourg, you see that this has also 4 million inhabitants. So if you build around this region, crossing borders, then you have a lot of strategic alliances that are possible. There are a lot of companies here. There are a lot of patents. You can build an academic network there. And what we also see here, it's really the complementarity of the institutions that's important. And we see a strong cluster there in life sciences and biotechnology. So that's why we pursued these collaborations. And if you look in this region, you see there are, next to Maastricht, a number of powerful universities. Luxembourg is here, Liège, Aachen, a big technical university, Eindhoven, Hasselt, and Leuven. So in this kind of network where we are in different countries, we all have, of course, our home responsibilities. We can build a very strong collaboration association, which we have done with some of these universities. So our regional collaboration strategy really was, let's look at our economic profile, also across the border, and see how we can link that with research and education. And we choose what we call a smart specialization strategy, where we look where the matches between research, education, and industrial strengths in this region. And they are bio-based chemistry, life science and health, high-tech system, agro-food, logistics, and maintenance. So we thought this is something we should follow up. So we went in discussion with our local governments, with industrial partners in the region. And that's how we endorsed this triple helix concept. It's really a collaboration of universities, governments, and private companies. And say that's not new, but I think really it's a partnership of equals. We see each other as co-investors in the future of our region. We all put money and input on the table, and we thought, let's develop some topics where we really could strengthen not only our academic standing, but also, for example, employment in our area. So the partners who started this are Maastricht University, our medical center, the province of Limburg, and two companies at the beginning, DSM, which is a multinational specializing in materials research and food, and APG, which is one of the leading Dutch pension providers. So we started to really develop this concept further, and now we have many more partners. And we called this concept Brightlands. Here, this is this little province at the tip of the Netherlands, and the concept was knowledge crossing borders. Borders not only from universities to private industries, but also crossing the border between Germany and the Netherlands and Belgium and the Netherlands, and look for new collaborations. And you can see this region, although being small, it's really central because it's really close to some of the other hotspots in the area. And this is the topics that we choose for our region. This is a map of this little state, Limburg. And if you here go to, this is about 100 kilometers long and narrow. I always say it's like the Florida of the Netherlands. The only reason it's not surrounded by water, and it rains only 300 days a year. But anyway, here in the north you see an agro area. It's a lot of agrarian industry. Here in the middle we have a very large materials campus, Chemmaterials campus, with this company DSM. Here in this area there are a lot of pension funds, banks, back offices of large data companies. So we thought business intelligence and data science is a hotspot here. And in Maastricht, we have the only university medical center in the southeast of the Netherlands. So we said this is also very important to invest in health. So around these four clusters, we said we need to develop new strategies to collaborate with our private partners, create economic hotspots, also use co-creation and knowledge transfer and new education programs with the goal to enhance employability. So the Brightlands campuses around these four topics, health, smart services, food and materials, have been established a few years ago. And the idea is, of course, to link education, research, innovation by co-creation with industry. And the new concept here was that we not only enhanced our own university campus with this idea, but we also built 3 new campuses close to the industrial sites, on location, where companies are, and really have the students there, have the research there, really like to enhance crossovers between the industrial sector and us. And this project has received also some funding, so together with our provincial government there was a 600 million euro investment over 10 years from 2013 to 2023 to facilitate this project. Our provincial government, regional government was convinced that investing in knowledge would be a good start also to investing in the economy. So we went on this endeavor, and I give you some of the structures and topics on these 4 campus initiatives. One is the Maastricht Health Campus around our University Medical Center. We have a strong focus here on the life sciences, on the neurosciences and regenerative medicine. So we also focus there to be really world leading in some of these areas. It's a campus that's focused on valorization. It's a Dutch word that sounds English, which means knowledge transfer. There are a lot of companies, more than 40 companies already on this campus, a lot of them small spin-offs, but also some larger players in the field. And we built some large-scale research infrastructure focusing on precision medicine, for example, high-field brain imaging. You see here a high-field MRI. We have now 3 MRIs with 3.7 and 9.4 Tesla, one of the top 4 infrastructures in the world to do this, and that creates a lot of business. Another initiative that started here is called RECMED, Regenerative Medicine Crossing Borders. It's a consortium of a number of universities in the Netherlands and Belgium that just went in for a large grant from our government for 200 million euro to develop new regenerative medicine solutions to conquer health challenges. Another area where we invested, got some top people to Maastricht, and really collaborate very intensively with our industrial partners who are also interested in this area. Then we have the Camelot campus in a small town north of Maastricht. There is a very large chem materials campus with lots of companies. Didn't have a lot of academic footprint. So we collaborated there to start really be a bio-based and smart materials, both in educational programs, but also placing some of our researchers there. And we created two institutes. One is an institute with this company DSM and the Technical University in Eindhoven, which is located in this building. And we also have an institute together with the Technical University of Aachen, which is the largest technical university in Germany. And this really brings critical mass together. For example, this is the opening of our Bio-Based Materials Institute with Aachen, Maastricht, and Fraunhofer. Fraunhofer is a valorization organization in Germany that really tries to bring products and applied research to the market, so it's a very powerful collaboration. In Venlo, which is the very north of our little province, it's the agricultural area, and there it's an agricultural and logistics hotspot. We also started some new educational programs there, and funny enough, I met two of our alumni of our health food management program here in Brisbane, who work for a company here. The graduates who come from all over the world also go all over the world because they have a high reputation in this area, and the focus there is really research on healthy eating and food innovation. And last not least, in Heerlen, with another city, it's a hub of innovative companies, a lot of pension funds, the national fiscal offices there. There's a lot of data analysis. So we created a research institute there with our researchers from Maastricht, Business Intelligence and Smart Services, which also now has its own master programs that recently got accredited. And this is really going around the big field of data science, smart service and finance, health, education, and citizenship. Just recruited a top professor from Stanford University. Thanks to Donald Trump, he was Canadian, he wanted to leave the country, and he took on this opportunity gladly. And in this institute, again, it shows this triple helix story. The board is really, I'm on the board, our regional minister for economics, the CEO of APG, the pension funds, but at the moment we have many more companies there who come on this campus who want to interact with us. Because data science, big data, data safety, storage, privacy, these are really issues that are pertinent. And our researchers from the medical school, but also from our ethics department, are very actively engaged in this endeavor. So I think just some examples how we can cross borders, not only into other sectors, but also physical borders, geographical borders, that we have done in the last few years. And I think it's probably one of the areas where we have been successful in putting ourselves on the map next to the older players in the country. So I think if I would be asked what would you need to have such a formula working, number one is long-term commitment. We have made a contract with our government for 10 years that we really need this time to build up structures that are sustainable. It's very important to spend a lot of time, understand each other's needs. You know, people in industry and university and government sometimes think a bit differently. So we had a number of 24-hour seminars where we put a lot of experts from these three sectors in the room overnight, and then the next morning we haven't killed each other. They came up with some pretty good ideas that we then implement in our campuses. Co-creation and co-investment is very important because we decided that it not only ask our government for money, we also said we were ready to invest as a university strategically in some of these endeavors. And then you are, I think, taken more seriously as a partner, and you can learn a lot from each other. So it's really a partnership of equals, not a party asking another party for money. I think focus and critical mass. This was the most difficult one. When we looked into possible areas of collaboration, of course you get a list of 20 things that are happening somewhat in the region, from energy, water, and making this choice was really the hard part. But it really was important because if you don't have these focus areas, these 4 focus areas, with the ambition to be really world-class there, and it's really hard to put yourself on the map as a European, as a global player in this area. And you have to invest a lot in connections on all levels, at the academic level, at the managerial level, but also at the regional level. You have to really also show that these efforts are not only burning research money, but also doing something for the region. And we have done our first analysis after 3 years of this project, and it was not so bad. So what you see here on the dark blue, that's the targeted investment until now. And no, it's not the targeted investment, it's the targeted investment for 10 years. And the light one is what has already been invested by the partners, 82 million euro. What our regional government has invested, 109 million euro. And that was very important. We already getting 179 million euro from European grants, foundations, industry contributions. So this is really seeding money to gain this, and we are quite confident if you see these dynamics that we are not only achieve our goals, but overachieve our goals, particularly when it comes to extramural grant funding, industrial support, and so on. The second thing we investigated recently, what is the impact of this on our economy? And what you see is the GNP development over the last years in 3 areas. The whole of the Netherlands, the south of the Netherlands, and our region. And our region was particularly affected by the recent economical crisis. It was more affected in other parts of the Netherlands, but then you see, this is the 100% line, that in the last years we have actually overperformed the country and the south of the Netherlands, and this analysis is actually continuing to grow in 2016. So we can show that some of these activities also lead to economic growth. Why? For example, because you recruit a lot of new staff, both in the knowledge sector, but also in the industrial sector, who come there, who pay taxes, who contribute to the local economy. We also could show, like many of you, that international students, international staff are a very strong economical motor for a region. So after a discussion we had a few years in the Netherlands, is internationalization bad for you? Should the Dutch taxpayers pay for this? We could convince our government that it's actually a worthwhile investment, an investment that's much better than having your stocks at Goldman Sachs or Lehman Brothers. So some take-home messages. I strongly believe that regional and global impact is not a contradiction. You can be proud to be a regional university. It's a continuum because it's also the basis for having a global footprint. Number 2, it's really the joint investment in a triple helix that creates a partnership of equals, which is really the basis for success. And 3, crossing borders into other sectors, but also other countries that may be closer by than your usual suspect you want to collaborate with, has a strong economical and societal impact. And last but not least, we talked yesterday already a bit about reputation and how difficult it is, but also how important it is. And if I may make a suggestion to the rankings team, maybe you have to look at reputation differently if you want to look at the reputation of young universities. For those who cannot provide Isaac Newton in the next 200 years, maybe our impact that we make in the industrial sector, maybe the reputation that we have gained there in our regions is also a reputation that should be counted more prominently than we see it now, and based on the present, not on the past, and looking into the future, of course. So that's all I have to say. Thanks very much for your attention, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
So yeah, please do ask questions. We have lots of time. We need to make this as interactive as we can. We want to hear as much from the delegates as we do from the speakers, so there are mics around the room. Just raise your hands. For now, I think I don't want to be too parochial. It's an issue very close to my heart in particular, but I can't have you here without asking you about Brexit. Maastricht is in the absolute heart of Europe. I mean, what do you think? You talked about the Trump effect already having a positive effect on Dutch universities. We definitely feel there'll be some changes in the talent mobility, particularly students, but also faculty. What do you think Brexit and Trump mean for the world of internationalization? As this populist, anti-immigration, anti-mobility sentiment that's coming from 2 major higher education forces. What's your sense of how it'll pan out in terms of the damage potentially to the US and UK, but the opportunities for other types of collaboration and for other universities in other countries?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that Trump and Brexit are a wake-up call for many other countries, because we now have real life experiences what populism can do, and it's not generally considered as positive. But what these two events certainly will do is affecting student migration patterns. Students who are, I think the international application in some of American universities are down by 40%. And it certainly will also create, if Brexit really doesn't do something for student mobility within Europe. And so we see a reshuffling of the field. And it will be very interesting to observe that we recently had a meeting with a number of British institutions. And it was really a mix of opinions. Number one, thanks for Trump, they will come to us. We will be active on this market. And it won't be so bad. We can compensate a lot of students that we lose from Europe with this money. But I think on the European side, and you know in the Netherlands virtually all universities teach in English, it's also seen as an opportunity to be even more international on the market. So that will be very interesting to watch. I cannot make any predictions. And then the second issue is research, because the UK has been a very active participant in European research networks and funding. I think it's very important that there is really a solution to maintain that, because in the end it's about Europe as a continent, whether UK is part of the EU or not. And the third thing I'm most concerned about, that I think for the negotiations, it will be very important that higher education institutions can influence or sit even at the negotiation table in the second row, because a lot has been said in the UK and in Europe about things that don't work in Europe. I personally think that just the collaboration in higher education has been an example how Europe can work. So we should do everything by kind of protecting that as much as possible by having input in the negotiations.
And do you think, I mean, there's an interesting sense, isn't there, in the UK that, you know, we are this, or the UK is the greatest recipient of Horizon 2020 research funding. I mean, is Britain's loss Europe's gain? I mean, presumably Dutch universities, German universities could potentially get an awful lot stronger, receive much more money. Is that good for the Netherlands, or is it just bad for the whole of Europe?
I think it's always good and bad, but I think what concerns me, the UK, of course, was a strong champion of investing into higher education in Europe. And of course, losing that champion and having more countries that say, oh, well, we should more invest in agriculture and other things that we need more, is a concern. And so we have also to see how this is playing out. And the problem is now for the UK that it's not only about Gibraltar, it's also about how this other interaction will play out. And that's not longer in our hands as a group that plays together.
I think the numbers you showed, or the growth of the domestic product in the Maastricht area, is the most extraordinary case for investment in higher education. We need to keep making that case across the world. So we do have a question here, if we can get a mic. And please do raise your hand for more questions. We do have some time.
I'm Tanya Munro from the University of South Australia. Thank you, Martin, for an excellent talk. I was particularly intrigued by your comments on regional focus. You have the great advantage at Maastricht as being in the heart of this very dynamic part of Europe. Is there any insight or wisdom you might have for some of Australia's truly regional universities that are really not in this position?
Of course, yeah. I think the next region would be New Zealand. You could reach. I think our point is it's not only just being your neighborhood. It just happens to be in our case. But I would like to submit that as young universities, we are a lot more connected, or we have a lot more connections to our region, because in many cases we have been founded or erected because there was an economical crisis and so on. And we have found it very helpful to get in a conversation with our regional governments that we're not only universities that burn their money or something like that, but we're also employers that stay in this region, and our multinationals in our region, we have no guarantee that they won't move to China in a few years, but the University of Maastricht will always be in Maastricht. And having made that point has convinced our regional government, and I think it's what you said also, Phil, that knowledge is a value. It's a value that is very important for regional development, and that's why we also in our region have really created this principle, and that's very independent of that we just have over the border a number of other universities or companies, that we are strong economic players. And I think that's key, and I think with all due respect to our older colleagues who have longer playing in Europe and internationally, we have a stronger change to make that connect than them, and that should be our chance.
Thank you, and we have a question here.
I was interested. It's Roland DeMarco from the University of the Sunshine Coast. I was interested to hear you comment on the Dutch-Swiss and Nordic university systems. What are the characteristics of those systems that allow all of the universities, more or less, to perform at a world-class standard?
Well, that's a very good question. I think in a way in higher education they have a tradition to be more egalitarian. We call the Dutch higher education system, the same is true for some of these other countries, being a high plateau, where the universities are different from each other, but they all play in a certain league. And that it doesn't matter in the Netherlands if you study in Maastricht or Amsterdam or Groningen, you always get a good education, have a good research environment. And that's, I think, the tradition in these countries. Interestingly, our politicians, they feel sometimes a bit uncomfortable about it. It's that, always want to have a Harvard in the Netherlands. Shouldn't we have one university in the top 10 and don't care about the others? And we try to convince them that it's actually an asset to have such a high plateau because it creates a level playing field for researchers and for your students. And that's also a contribution to national higher education quality that can play a part in Europe. And that's why the Netherlands, frankly, has such a strong international influx of students. For example, from Germany, where they don't pay any tuition fees, they still come to the Netherlands because the education is better wherever you go.
I mean, that's always something that's fascinated me in terms of the rankings, that every single eligible research active Dutch university makes the top 200 of the world. So the idea that, we haven't got a top 50 and that's a cause of a problem, it's wonderful. The entire Dutch system is world class, it's world ranked. How important is the sort of the cooperation element there? That Dutch universities tend to have quite unique niches, even the older ones, so that there's not too much duplication. How much is the niche element there around finding your role in the system?
Well, one advantage is the combination of being a monarchy and a small country, because it's close-knit. I meet with my 13 colleagues once a month, and of course we are also competitors, but in these meetings we always also talk about joint strategies. One example, astronomy is one of the strongest fields in the Netherlands, but there are very small programs scattered across the country. So a few years ago we made a decision, let's really cluster them in 2 or 3 universities to really have this combination of focus and critical mass. These things are possible in the Netherlands, and it really helps to maintain this balance between really world players on one hand, and the other hand, being able to make adjustments in your own profile without only being competitors.
Sure. And I think Aaron has a mic there, and sorry, we'll come to you in a moment.
Good morning, Martin. Good morning, colleagues. Aaron Rensburg, University of Johannesburg. So you've also, Martin, have had some very interesting political dynamics with more to come, presumably, in the near future. And the question really is, it relates to your very important observation, the question of long-term commitment. We have an instance in Johannesburg where we've just had a sweep out, if you like, of the ruling party last year. So we've got a new coalition government in place, and they've simply swept away all of the wonderful partnerships and agreements that had been developed over the last 7 or 8 years with the University of Johannesburg. And so now we sit with the baby, so to speak. Any thoughts on how you are navigating that space and will navigate it in the near future?
I think, again, volatility in the political arena can be very effective in terms of destroying these structures, and it's very important that it's really investments that we have to do that are longer than cabinet periods. Fortunately, in the Netherlands, we just had an election, and for 4 more years we have that stabilities, and then we are 8 years into our program, so in my case I'm not so worried about it. But what I've observed, again, making the point of regional engagement, of creating jobs in the region, has convinced also the more critical and Euro-critical politicians in our area that we're doing a good thing. If we play the economical card, and some say, wow, and particularly our older colleagues, well, that's unacademic and you shouldn't talk about employability. If we have a strong accent on this, I think we are more protected against, I would say, the more extreme fluctuations. But there's never a guarantee. We have certainly built in some sort of protective measures that we can continue with these activities at a lower level if this money falls away. We are not going bankrupt, and we have reserves built up, so we are protected just in case. But again, I think playing our card as economical, important players is very important also in this arena.
And Question, thanks.
Hi, yeah, Andy Bridges from Central Queensland University. I'm just going to come back to the conversation about the sector in the Netherlands. I guess the reason for many of us as young universities that we exist is because there's been policy changes that's allowed things like colleges of advanced education or polytechnics to move to become universities. In the Netherlands, you do have a sector of universities of applied sciences. You mentioned you have 14 research universities who don't have doctoral awarding powers and I presume therefore don't undertake research. And I just wondered if there's any movement within the Netherlands for those universities to develop, and you might have a whole lot more young universities in the Netherlands as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Netherlands has a binary system. They haven't done the movement such in the UK in '92 because, and it doesn't mean it's really about quality of being first or second class. It is really catering to different groups of students, and we have a high value on these University of Applied Sciences, and we actually collaborate with them. You know, what we see, we have in our region, we have 2 of these universities, actually part of our Brightlands concept, and we do research together and taking different roles in the spectrum between fundamental and applied research. We also have programs that allow students from universities of applied science to grow through into the university, which we call transition programs. So it's really we see them as partners in a complex system. And you know, I'm originally from Germany, where we also have the ambition that every university of applied science wants to get rid of this. You know, we are University of Science, and you know, I think we are all playing a diverse field. We are catering to diverse partners. And it's not only whether you're a PhD giving institution that you can do research. We found that a very valuable interaction with these colleagues and really think of them as regional partners in a higher education landscape than as competitors. And I think that's another thing why this binary system in the Netherlands is not under pressure at the moment.
So we'll just squeeze in one final question, I think. Aaron, you have the mic?
Yeah. Arun Sharma, QUT. Just a couple of quick questions. One is you did talk about the internationalization and the percentage of international students and faculty. Could you give the numbers for what's the non-European student percentage and the non-European faculty?
Yes. In non-European student percentage, we are 10%, so we are really, as I pointed out, a European university, which again makes us different from other Dutch universities, where the numbers are just the other way around. And given our location, our proximity to Brussels, that's also programmatic. It's not just an accident. We're looking for these markets. In terms of our faculty, it's more diverse. We have a higher percentage there. I think it's about 70-30, European, non-European. So, but we call ourselves in our strategic program a European university with global impact.
It's worth saying that Maastricht is famous in the United Kingdom for nicking UK students. There's every year the media puts out dozens of stories. Maastricht is taking British students.
And in 2 years, our non-EU student percentage will go up dramatically because we have a lot of UK students.
So my second question, I don't want to go into the reasons for why they do that. It might be totally different. You did talk about, like, engaging with different sectors of the economy, whether it is in the health and biomedical sciences or material science or the smart services area. Do you see in your university certain technological trends or certain techniques and capabilities that are crossing over across these sectors?
Yes, we do. And that's also our concept that after 10 years, these 4 initiatives should really be one. If you look, for example, at the concept of big data and data science, that's something that affects all of these 4 sectors. Secondly, if you look at that our focus is in one of these areas, bio-based materials, we also have a campus that works intensively with agriculture. I mean, that's where the bio-based is developed. You know, we have one project where we create latex from dandelions that is then modified and put into productions on the material campus, and some of these products are then also used on the medical campus. So this whole Brightlands concept, which has been built with these 4 areas, will grow into one area. And the crossover, such as big data and data sciences, or the production, modification, and implementation of materials are 2 of these crossover themes.
Thank you very much. Well, that's all we have time for. So if we could thank Martin Paul.
Thank you.